I'm Ashish Interview. I'm a physician practicing in Mount Sinai Medical Center. And I'm also Chief Technology Innovation and Engagement Officer in medicine at Mount Sinai. I direct Sinai App Lab. We make apps. We have a 10-people team. And our goal is also not only to do innovative stuff, but also to engage other physicians and patients to kind of change the ecosystem and move towards a better healthcare. When I think of personalized healthcare, I think of a more focused definition, and I think of a very broad definition per se. So the focused definition, how personalized healthcare is used, is mostly in genomics, use of genomics data for healthcare, and how that's driving our decisions. So for example, there's a field called pharmacogenomics, where every patient may have a different affinity to certain medications. Some medications may not work for certain people, and some may cause a lot of side effects. So how do you integrate all this molecular data and all this omics data and make it to physicians or to the patients at the point of care so they can make decisions and say, hey, for you, this medicine is not the right one, or this medicine is the right one. So that, I think, is a more focused definition of personalized healthcare. And we've been using genomics or molecular data since World War II. Think of ABO blood typing. That's routine part of our clinical care. We do blood typing before we give you blood transfusion. That's molecular data. That's genomic data. But now we have tools and we have processing power to actually integrate the entire genes and gene expression data and make it available. So that's one part. I think the other part is, and I do not know which one you are thinking of, the other one is a very broad perspective of personalized healthcare, which is providing a very contextually relevant, specific information to the patients wherever they are. And in a way, we, as physicians or care providers, do it. When a patient comes to us, we try to see what their social cultural background is, what medications they have tried before, whether they can afford the cost of the medications or not, those kind of things. But really, the information age can take it away from just face-to-face. You can provide this personalized information nugget to the patients even when they're not seeing you. Instead of a person who is 80-year-old fighting with Alzheimer's, maintaining his balance, getting an information blast how to make a six-pack abdomen, right? Which is not relevant to that person, which does not lead to action. They get specific information how to have more balance gait in their life. So that is a very wider perspective of personalized healthcare where apps can play a big role. Right. So I'm really excited about telemedicine. And not just telemedicine, but the whole concept of video and making two people at distance coming live for a certain care or research. And I think that's transformational. Now, it's not new though. I had opportunity to practice telemedicine in 2003, 2004 when I was in Cleveland Clinic. And we had many patients who were employees of Cleveland Clinic, but not in the same facility. So it would have taken them 1 hour to come over, 1 hour to leave, and waiting time and other stuff. We didn't want to waste that much productive time of our employees just trying to get routine care. So we had an office set up in their facility, second facility, and a nurse used to room them, and we used to do telemedicine and provide care. But there was no reimbursement at that time. That's why we were doing only for our employees. Now suddenly with these apps and the tablets, the platform is becoming like consumer friendly. And the reimbursement policy is kind of shaping it up very nicely as well. So I think it's a natural alignment. When there's a payment, everyone has the device. We don't have to buy a specific device for telemedicine. And suddenly it can increase the access to care, which is a big issue. So I'm really excited. A simple example of telemedicine can be, it happened to my mother-in-law. She was here. She fell over ice. This was last winter, and she possibly had a fracture. She didn't know she has to go to emergency room, or it's not a fracture and she has to just go to urgent care, or she can sit out for the weekend. She just did a FaceTime with me, and we were off-site at that time, and we saw how it was. It was really bad. And we said, you really have to go to an emergency room right away, right? Now again, we just had FaceTime at that time, and we both had iPhones at that time. But now there are platforms which are device agnostic. So, and there are tools out there where patients can connect to emergency care just at the touch of a button. And so I think it's really transformational how that's shaping up. And I think it's very organic. Part of the reason I like in Sinai, it's very organic, where each lab, so to speak, has a freedom to kind of grow on itself and then connect and forms those bands. So I was initially in division of gastroenterology. That's why most of my funding came from. And very soon they realized that a lot of what we were doing was disease agnostic, which means the same application we were making, like Health Promise, which connects patients to physicians, and patients can enter data about themselves, which goes to physicians, can be used for any other disease or many other diseases. So I got a role of Chief Technology Innovation Engagement Officer for whole Department of Medicine, which is 12 divisions. So the platforms we are building apps for, we're making in a way that it's not only for my area of interest, which is inflammatory bowel disease or IBD, but it can be used for heart failure, it can be used for rheumatology patients. And that is allowing me a window of opportunity to learn about all these other diseases, which I learned as a medical student. But now being in a super specialized world, I'm a little different. My field is different, but through technology, I'm now reconnecting with all those different specialties and learning how they are providing care and how we can have a common platform which can all provide patient care, even though in a very specialized way. So within Sana, it's like a mecca. We're just enjoying it. And I think now with New York, I think things are shaping up. Through New York eHealth Collaborative, we had a lot of organizations getting together and saying what are our best practices, how we are using disruptive technology. And there is no role model, there's no path. So you have to learn from your peers, and someone is doing better, someone is ahead of you, you learn from them, and then you also try to evaluate, because you not only want to use technology for technology's sake, but actually really it has to make a difference in outcomes. So you really also want to prove, does in my setting, the same application, now the same technology really can give me that much benefit or not? And then you share with your peers in conferences. So I think it's moving very fast, but together I think it's great. I think learning has ceased to be you do your grad school and you're done, now you do your this. I mean, it's a continuous learning thing. And it's fascinating. And it's now the learning is more which you can really apply to your day-to-day practice. That's what's powerful. I'm not forced to learn something which I don't know what's the value of that is, right? I'm only learning things. In fact, I'm learning so much from Silicon Valley. I attend their MOOCs courses, the massive online courses, and how they have grown, this whole technology enterprise. And I often attend those courses, and now I'm able to attend Stanford courses, which I would never have been able to. It's amazing. Right. And I think it's a very important question. I'm glad you asked it, because within this all this jazz and kind of a snazzy thing of tech world, we sometimes lose that perspective. We just do things which look good, which look spiffy, but may not provide that much value. I think the challenge is up to us, not only as healthcare providers, but just to say everything that we do in technology has to be evaluated. Why should a drug goes through a rigorous controlled trial before we take it, but we are ready to give an app to our patient without testing it at all, without testing the privacy and the security of it? So I think there has to be evaluation of it for everything, and that's what we do. We call it app informatics. We do clinical trials on apps. And I'm glad you asked this question. It's not just it has to be for humanity. It has to serve a purpose, right? And very often, we see this spiffy stuff and we see this snazzy kind of app. We say, wow, this is gonna use it. But where does it provide value? I think it's our job to measure it as well, to evaluate. We're calling it app informatics. So we do clinical trials many times, or pre-post trials to prove the app actually led to improvement in outcomes. Because that outcome and that improvement in outcomes really drive everything else. And I think we don't have to lose focus on technology and then lose focus on patients per se. The whole purpose of technology is to bring patients at the center and free ourselves from everything else. Thinking of telemedicine, right? The patient and the face just comes, physician and patient just connect to each other real time. And everything else is in the background, right? You don't have to worry about driving to the patient, to the physician offices, parking in the physician offices, sitting in the waiting room for 45 minutes to 1 hour, and then having this 15 minutes chat time. You can do it right now. So I think technology provides, toolkit. We in healthcare have to kind of really put our brains together, heads together to say, how do we optimize and bring this toolkit with patients being at the center? And so there's a lot more work that needs to happen in taking this toolkit and engaging with our patients and with other physicians. And I think that's where the challenge is, and that's where opportunity lies as well. And I think, again, it's how we use technology is very key. So there's some study that shows that like we use a lot of electronic health records where we capture patients' experiences and we type it in our notes. And what really has transformed is the famous doctor's illegible handwriting, right? So I remember when I was in 2001, I was that we hadn't converted to electronic medical records. So patients used to come. Sometimes I didn't used to have their chart, so I didn't know what their background was. Sometimes when I used to have the chart, I couldn't interpret the handwriting of my peers, right? And then there's a big gap in the care. How can you provide a care when you don't know the patient's history or their previous lab results? So I think suddenly with respect to electronic health record, I can so easily communicate. I can, as soon as the patients come, I can see all my peers what they have written about the patient and whether they are in cardiology, whether they're in internal medicine. So within that moment, within 1 minute, I exactly know what the patient's history is. So when I'm thinking now, I'm thinking about that background. So, and then within this electronic record, when I put my note, I can just forward this note to my peers. So they can know electronically through the in-basket what I'm thinking about this patient, right? So, and they don't have to interpret my bad handwriting, right? So I think it's really transformational. Some of the value is so obvious with technology that we don't even think of it right now. And this is a typical example. I think we still have to cross the bridge when it comes to peers outside our health system. And there's a lot of money spent, a lot of grants, a lot of opportunities creating this national health information network, kind of setting platforms where data from one electronic health record can go to other electronic health record. But I think there's much more gap right now, where it's not easy to just transform what I'm learning about my patient to another physician who's referring the patient to me. But there are many new startup companies which are trying to bridge that gap as well. So I think it's exciting. So the question is, how New York eHealth Collaborative plays a role in terms of encouraging collaboration between peers. And I think it plays really a central role to some regard. There's so many startup companies which are trying to come with some disruptive products, but what is lacking is engagement with bigger enterprise. And what New York eHealth Collaborative does is it kind of brings all those patients who are trying to do some cutting edge technology and they having no voice at all, them having a voice and then being engaged with centers like Mount Sinai or Cornell or Columbia. And I think enterprises itself are also learning that in this accountable care, what we are calling, where we're not just paid for one-to-one visit, we're actually paid for population and improving the population outcomes as a whole. To really move that needle in that direction, we need some disruptive technology. And no enterprise is big enough or smart enough to create all the technologies on itself. We have to leverage what's all going. Even at Sinai App Lab, even though we have a 10-people team, we actually have a co-development lab where we partner with other startup companies and other bigger organizations because they may have some technology, we may have something, but really it's a marriage of those technology which may create transformational product. So I think the need is ubiquitous to really partner, collaborate, and we need accelerators like New York eHealth Collaborative and others more in the city to have I would say more cohesive and coordinated kind of strategy for e-health and digital health in New York City. I'm glad you asked the question. I'm a big fan of telemedicine, as you've heard, but there's something about face-to-face, right? So when I meet a person, I actually know who the person is. I can connect with that person. I think for any kind of major collaboration, knowing the person, shaking hands with that person, and just having an informal chat, so to speak, allows me to know it sets the foundation for future collaboration, for future discussions. Otherwise, if it's just totally virtual, I don't know whom to trust, right? Because every time has some value, and there are always more companies, and some of them may not be that do the things the right way. So you really want, for enterprises to connect with startups, there has to be a trust. And to enable that trust in a startup company where they're just starting for the first time, sometimes you really have to meet and kind of know, yes, this person is on the right track. And there are also so many intangible things you can learn if you meet face to face. It's not just the product, it's what drives them. What is their team? What are they trying to do in the bigger picture? And product may be just a very small part of it. And the collaboration may happen not because of that product. The collaboration may be happening just because of alignment in the common vision. And you may end up doing something which is very different than the product, but that discussion may never have happened if there's no kind of a face-to-face and kind of more organic kind of a talk discussion. So that's why I feel that you know, online is all good, and I'm a firm believer in that. But having a face-to-face connection really starts the foundation where everything can be built on top of that. Right. And that's a very tough question to answer, and part of it is some of the costs are intangible and not easily measured. So when we think of cost, we think of the costs which are like from the patient's perspective, the costs or the reimbursement for physicians or the healthcare provider perspective, and from a society perspective. So we'll just take our favorite example again, the telemedicine one, right? So if a patient is able to get a care right from their home, they're saving on cab costs, they're saving on parking costs, they're saving all this waiting time cost. So there's a cost benefit to the patient, assuming they're getting the same amount of care, the same kind of quality care. Society is saving because if this person is saving 2 hours of kind of time just trying to make appointment and seeing a healthcare provider, that 2 hours can be spent somewhere else, whether at work or some other productive. Society is benefiting. But that does not necessarily mean the healthcare provider or the healthcare institution is benefiting from it. They may save on time, but not too much, because physician may have to ask more questions because he or she is not in front of the patient, right? So there may be more cost. They may have to utilize or subscribe to a platform where they may be fees to it, right? And it is a possible they may not get that much revenue back as a face-to-face visit, right? So if I see a patient face-to-face, there's a way I can get reimbursement back. But for telemedicine, it's actually dependent on states, right? So, and I think that's what we call is a misaligned incentive. The incentives really for things to happen in healthcare, all the incentives for all those key people have to align up. The payers, the providers, and the patients. And till that happens, things can happen at a pilot stage, at a random stage, but it doesn't become mainstream. But you can see virtually as soon as an insurance company or a payer starts reimbursing telemedicine, it may become very easy for me to connect with my patients coming from 2 hours, 3 hours away. They may actually see me more often than seeing every 6 months, and I may have more opportunity to change and improve their outcomes. And if I'm getting reimbursed, the patient is benefiting from avoiding all this unnecessary cost, right? And the employers are winning because the patient does not have to take 1 day off just to see me. Everyone wins in the same game. So I think when we do cost analysis, sometimes we may just do one person from a patient perspective or from provider perspective. Really, we have to see from a society perspective. And I think then you can really prove the value of the technology in that regard. I think they are real. I mean, we can't, the snafu with the iCloud, right? So that's real. That happened. And the question is, I think I was talking with my friends, exactly the same discussion. He said, Ashish, it's not that whether it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Some breach of privacy is going to happen. It's about what all things you have done to prevent that from happening. As we are getting everything digital, it's inevitable someone is going to hack something, someone is going to do something. But can we go through best practices? And from our side, we do everything. It's like a car, right? We try to have a seatbelt in position. We drive carefully. There's a specific license kind of a things. But still we need insurance because sometimes we can run into accidents. It's the same thing as everything is getting digital. There may be some accidents down the line, but we'd really have to do more security than we do in a normal consumer space. And there are regulations such as HIPAA, the many other regulations per se we have to comply with. And that's where I think we really have to move a little further along. It's good to be organic, it's good to have all these startup companies, but at the same time there has to be a framework where the bigger healthcare enterprise know that this data is not going to just leak out, right? So that calls for engagement, and New York Health Collaborative can provide some standard platforms or help build those platforms where we trust not only the technology is good, but we also trust the security feature and the privacy feature of the technology is good. And there are, again, startup companies who are trying to build that, be kind of a middle layer. And they will say, hey, startup companies, if you come, we will help you get to a very trustworthy platform which enterprises can then trust and engage with your technology. I think people are getting smarter in hacking, and we have to just stay up on that in making sure. But I would submit to you that we are much more safer than in a paper world, right? So if the records were in a paper, they will get loose, they'll go to a trash can, and someone can access patient's record. So just not having someone access to a patient paper records by making them digitalized actually is a big step forward we have done. So people sometimes, or we sometimes forget all the big wins we have done from privacy and making all these electronic health records electronic, and it's much more safer, I think, than losing a whole patient's chart out when it's getting transported. So I think we've made good progress. There's still more to do, I think, but it's a never-ending kind of a journey. We just have to keep on evolving. I think the opportunities are endless, and really I feel. So I remember my days in 90s when I was learning accessing internet. I was in India at that time. I had one of the first computer in my hostel, and we were using DOS-based like modem to connect, right? And I was using email, and that allowed me to come here and do my master's in public health. From there, how technology has been evolving, and now it's like suddenly very fast. It's so fast that we can't even keep, up to date. We can't know what's going on so fast. I think the possibilities are limitless. But I think while so much innovation is happening, I think there's an equal effort on engagement that needs to be happening. In my role as Chief Technology Innovation Engagement Officer, I'm seeing there's actually a bridge. Even though we have all these great electronic health records and other tools, not many physicians are using all the features, right? It's like you may have like a great car, but you may not use the features of the great car, and it's just on a showcase. I think we have to not only just do innovative stuff, but actually do engagement. And engagement not only with physicians or care providers, engagement with patients. They all have smartphones, right? But we don't give them apps which actually leads change in outcomes. They have fitness apps they can get, but no one guides them. Again, coming back to this 80-year-old guy, what is the app for him to learn about balance and not about how to run a marathon, right? So we have to really do innovation and engagement in parallel. I think a lot more has to be done in that regard per se. But I see New York City as a great opportunity. I think we have one of the largest density of healthcare providers, but density alone is not sufficient. I think they have to be engaged in a concerted, coordinated way. And one of my friends said that innovation happens in a space, but there are also boundaries, because you can innovate in anything. You can innovate about making a better cloth, better suiting design, anything, right? But if you define in a space, then people can build on top of each other, right? So if we say New York Health, we're gonna build on digital health, right? Then companies who are in digital health space will come. Then someone who has some related technology will build on top of it. But if we do in every kind of innovation, we will not be able to create a momentum in one vertical, and we will not be able to build on top of each other and kind of create that New York City is basically for digital health per se. So I think innovation is great, and I think more concerted space has to be happen, maybe at New York State level, New York City level, philanthropy, at all levels, ventures level, to say, are we ready to say that New York City should be Silicon Valley for digital health? So New York City is amazing. I've been here 2 years. It's amazing vibe in the city. There's amazing kind of a culture to do stuff, and to do stuff which is out of the box. And I think equal effort has to be done in putting this all efforts, which may seem a little fragmented right now, to put it all together, a concerted, coordinated effort to say, can we label them and brand them under digital health space? Because what that gives is a voice, a unified voice. And that unified voice, the New York City officials, the New York State, the philanthropy, all can hear, we want to be Silicon Valley in digital health space. Because then everyone which is doing something creative can build on top of each other and connect to each other, right? One of my friends said that innovation happens and it requires a lot of freedom, but still needs some boundaries to be defined. Otherwise, the connections don't happen. And so we have all the physicians, we have all the healthcare providers, we have cutting edge institutes, we have great technology folks. What we really need is kind of this catalyst or accelerator which binds all of them with a vision of becoming a Silicon Valley for digital health. Sure. I think we covered the engagement part, I think, which was my most important part. So I used your kind of question to segue into engagement, which which I think is really what I truly believe in. In fact, I was lucky enough to pick my own title, and they said it's so long title. I said no, but innovation and engagement have to go together. And if it is not in my title, then I'm not living and breathing it every day when I tell people. So so I think it's central. Um, I don't think so. I think we covered most of it.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Great.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.